Hey, welcome to another Observable notebook run through. This one will be solving a problem that I'm actually having, that I've been reading a lot of PDFs, and I'm kind of a picky reader. Like almost all the time I use Instapaper or I read stuff on a physical book. And what I see when I'm trying to read these academic articles, kind of like this one, it's useful data, but I don't really like reading in this form. I would rather it be nicely formatted and all that stuff. But they're all locked away in PDFs. And if you've ever worked with PDFs, they're not the best format to work with. Unlike a web page, I can't just run Instapaper on this, or in a lot of cases, like even just copy and pasting from this won't really work. So it's a bit of a challenge, and I'm at least just going to try to extract the text from this PDF and maybe make it into a little bit more of a readable form. And yeah, just hang with me. This will be kind of more of a real world, warts and all run through. So I'm just going to go and start a notebook, and I won't generalize too much. I'll just name the notebook like effects of light rail. And the first thing that I want to do is just to check that I can load this file. So I'm going to use fetch and take the URL of the file. And honestly, I can kind of see already that this isn't going to work. So it's under a HTTPS URL, and with browser security, Observable is under HTTPS, and this file is HTTP. And so your browser is just going to reject this request. So when I run that, I get failed to fetch. Not totally unexpected. Your browser thinks that it's being downgraded to a lower level of security, and it rejects the request as a result. So this is the workaround that I usually do. I download the file, and you can do this with a lot of different ways, but I just dragged it onto this little guy, which is now. This is Zeit.com or Zeit now. It's a little mini hosting service. It's a lot like Dropbox or any other thing where you just kind of throw a file on it and it works. It's really similar to Gist too, except I found that it's a lot better for larger files and binary files like this one. So now that I've switched to Zeit, fetching works. Great. Of course, this is a PDF, so I have this response. If I actually look at the response body, it's going to be gibberish. It's going to be PDF. It's not like HTML. It's not readable, even if you know what's going on. So luckily, Mozilla Corporation has written PDFJS. So I'll just Google for PDFJS. That's the thing that we're going to use. I know ahead of time that it's pretty good. Using PDFJS in a web application, So you can use PDFJS-dist. So the first thing, before I even name it, I'll just try require PDFJS. Great. I'll name it PDFJS equals this. Now let's try, instead of fetching this file, I'll name this file URL. I'll just pin these cells. Pinning the cells keeps them open. And so I'll do pdfjs dot, and I'll totally see if I can see anything in here that's obviously going to do what I want. Let's see if get document, it's a guess. Okay, that at least gives me an error. So global worker options dot worker source. Nothing here, so I'll go over interactive examples, great. Global worker options, cool. So what this looks like is that PDFJS uses a web worker behind the scenes. A web worker is a really pretty nifty JavaScript feature that lets you run what in other languages would be a thread. And so I'll adapt what's happening in this example. So this example is loading PDFJS by a script tag, and we're loading it by require. So what it's going to be named, here it's named PDFJS, that's going to be a little bit different. And also, I am probably not going to load worker source from Mozilla. So this is a little trick that's kind of useful. PDF. All right, so when you want to change something when a library is just loaded, the require method in Observable, what it does behind the scenes is that it returns a promise, which eventually resolves to the value of that module. And then you can use .then on that promise to modify what's going on or set some kind of initial setting that you want all of the cells that reference PDFJS, you want them all to use that setting. So the other thing that I need to do, and kind of winging it here. Great. So I need to figure out where this worker that I can see referenced here is. Actually, this is just pdf.worker.js. So it's probably the same pattern. I can probably just take this URL and replace PDFJS with pdf.worker.js. So I'll copy that, oops, and .worker. Okay, let's see if that is the correct URL. pdf.worker.js and pdf.worker.js. Okay, so this doesn't seem to be very happy about that. This might be a, okay, yeah, so that was just PDFJS had some kind of global, and I refreshed the page and it went away. Sometimes that happens. So great. Now I can get rid of this cell that was just figuring out where we were loading PDFJS from, the require.resolve. It essentially does the same thing that require.resolve would do in Node.js, and it tells you for the shorthand for PDFJS dist, where does that actually go to on the internet, and this is the file that we were loading. So with that gone, we have pdfjs.getDocument with URL. I'll move this cell. You can also just drag and drop cells to rearrange them. Move this cell to the bottom and kind of consult the documentation for how to get the first page. And just like you would expect, it is a get page. And I'll name this. So I'll name this cell doc, and then I can refer to doc from other cells. So I'll create a new cell called doc. Just hitting tab will autocomplete. So get page 0, 1. Okay, pages in PDFs are apparently 1 indexed. So one interesting note is that I'm pretty sure that the entire PDFJS API is using promises. So I can look at the output of this and it says like page index is 0, but it's undefined if you refer to it directly in this cell. And that's because at cell boundaries in Observable, what we do is that we resolve promises. We wait until the promise is resolved, and then the other cells see the value of that cell instead of the promise, which might still be in flight. If you were to do this in one cell, then you could use await. Yeah. And await will be able to get you the page index. But nevertheless, it's easier to just refer to page as a variable, as a named cell, and then in the next cell I can hit page and hit tab, and then I can get a list of stuff that is in that page. I think get text content is essentially what I want. It sounds like what I want. And this gives me items and, okay, a bunch of blank strings, but yeah, totally. So here I get page.get text content, and this is showing me like little snippets of the text that I can clearly see is here on page 1. I'm going to, page 1 is not what I want to convert. I want to start with page 3 here. That's the introduction. I don't want the abstract. I mean, it's fine, but let's start with page 3. And notice that when I update the page cell, this page.getTextContent cell automatically reruns because these cells are reactive. So this is looking a lot better. We have a list of items, and these items are these tiny little runs of text in the file. So we have like real estate prices reveal the dig, and yeah, real estate prices reveal the degree. Oh, and you can see in the PDF, see how there's a little, in my selection of that text, the E's at the end of degree are selected a little bit differently. That's because PDFs are total chaos, and this up to deg is a different text object than the rest of the line. So that's why it's a little bit of a tricky task. But nevertheless, we are up to it. So let's name this cell to text content equals page.getTextContent. And moving on, we'll do text content dot items. So this is all of these little runs of text. And let's see what it looks like if I concatenate together all of the stir properties of all of these objects. So I'll do items.map, item.stir. So here are all of the strings. And then from there on, it would just be, and I think I should just concatenate them with a blank space. Yeah. All right, one big string with no gaps, with, that isn't wrapping, because it's a literal string. We can make this look a little bit more like text by using what we use as the markdown tagged template. This is the same thing that I'm using for the title of this page. And okay, with the markdown tag template, you can see some of the text of page 2 isolated. So I am thinking that once the heuristic for figuring out what's the text and what isn't is done, I can loop through and, just kind of do the whole document. But for now, I'm going to start working on that heuristic. So number 1, probably just because I expect this to be easy, possibly incorrectly, is that I want to see if I can get rid of the page number. I can see that the page number is 2, and okay, I think that the page number is probably in a predictable place for each of the pages. So I'll try out requesting a bunch of other pages, 3, 4. Yeah, so all of these pages, it looks like they start with a blank space and a number. So this is not really something that I could generalize to other to other documents, but I bet this will work pretty well for this one. So let's start out with text content is, and then we'll call this formatted. So this is a new kind of cell that I'm using. So previously cells are expressions in this. So text content equals page.getText content. They're all just single JavaScript expressions. I'm not using any kind of statements or if else or whatever. But this one for formatted, I want to do a little bit more logic. Specifically, I think I should start with doing a basic old for loop to get rid of these of the page numbers. And so it looks like a block. It just starts and ends with a curly bracket. And so this should be fairly simple. What I'll do is do a loop over let item of text content items, and I'll create a little boolean for whether we've seen the page number, and I'll call that seen page number. Yeah, sure. And then I'll say if item.trim or item.stir.trim equals an empty string, or item.stir.trim match if it's a number, if it looks like a number. Seen page number equals true. Or well, okay, so maybe this won't work all that well, but it's not actually that far from working. I think what I really just need to do is to get rid of the first two things in the array. So slice to, or let okay. So introduction, real estate prices, okay, so I just have to check that or no increase is the first thing on this page, which it totally is. But in the PDF order, the page number is the first thing on the page. So we've kind of correctly gotten rid of that. And now I'm going to split the cell that shows this as Markdown from the cell that's computing it in JavaScript. Just because, I mean, it seems like it'll be useful to have the raw JavaScript value around. So the next thing that I need to do is to figure out how to turn these paragraphs, which disappear when we do this transformation, into like line breaks, so that Markdown can actually show them. So I'll look at these items again, and what I do know is that something like conflicting is a paragraph. And so I'll look at stir, and so it has a width, height, a font name, and a transform. And the transform is probably what I need to look at, because the transform will say where it is on the page, and we'll be able to tell that since this one has a transform that's a little bit further into the right, then we'll be able to tell that it's a new paragraph. So first I'll just look at all of the transforms, and I'll also join them so that they're easier to look at. Will tabs align here, maybe? No, they won't. Okay, so what I can tell is that the first three elements of the transform are the same, and third one, or 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So one of these should be increasing as we go along the page. 4, 5. And it looks like possibly these are out of order, or possibly they're going from the bottom up, because this text is in the correct order. Okay, so let's look at conflicting results versus tracks but are decreased. So conflicting results has a 126 here, and tracks that are decreased, yeah. Okay, so my bet is that the fourth element of the transform is the Y position, and let's see what happens if we just say that 126 is probably about the indent size. So let's say that item.transform 4 equals 126. We might want to round eventually here, but and what that'll do is that it will add a line break. Let's say 2 line breaks. Okay, so that worked for this paragraph. At the risk of being a little bit too confident in this working, let's assume that that will work for all of the paragraphs, and let's format the entire document. Okay, so what this will essentially amount to is that these cells are all split out, which has been really great because I can toggle between them and so on. But right now I want to run all of them multiple times. So I want to run this in a loop, and therefore I want to combine them. So I'll combine these two guys, and it's going to look kind of gnarly and broken for one brief moment. And that's because instead of being cells, it's really only a few changes that are required. Cool. So to review what I just did there, because I did it a little bit quickly, is that I added a wait before each of these JavaScript expressions like doc.getPage. And the reason why I did that is because Observable, as I kind of referred to before, it resolved promises. So it was solving this async problem for us when these were individual cells. But since I'm going to be running them in a loop, I actually have to resolve the promises myself. And the await keyword essentially does that. It's the equivalent vaguely of what .then was. And also, since they're variables, I have to say what kind of variables they are. And so in this case, I'm using const. It could also be var. It could also be let. Which one you use is kind of a taste thing. All right, so, and then this will be formatted. And that will break the formatted cell, but that's okay because I'm going to move that in here. All right, so now I have one cell that condenses what all these cells are doing. And I'll, yeah, return text is more to the point of what I'm trying to do. Oh, I have one more challenge. So I need to get, how many pages does it have? Get stats maybe? Let's see, get stats, no. Metadata? No. Get page index. Well, resort to the documentation. Get page num, render page, num pending, queue page, num pages. Okay, so doc.num pages is the number of pages I need. Great. So here is where I refer to page 5. I can still kind of tweak that and get different pages. So first, I'll move text up to the beginning of this function because I'm going to concatenate all the text in this paper and say for let I page number. Let page number equal 4, which is still going to be the first page that I want, and page number is less than or equal to doc.num pages and page number plus plus. All right, so now this is just repeating this one page over and over and over again. You'll just never forget what this page has to say. Indent this little bit of page, a little bit of code, and now I'll switch page number 4 to this page number variable. Great. So this is now concatenating all of the pages. And I'll just do a quick review to make sure that I'm not really, let's see, transit and commercial properties, transit and commercial properties. So that's getting intermixed in all of the text, which is not great. Again, for this one document, I think I have a pretty quick solution, or I hope I have a pretty quick solution. So first, I'll figure out what page this is on. So this is on page numbered 5, which is really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's really page number 6. Page 6. And here I am going to use await in this cell just because I, want to run this as a really quick experiment. So I'll look for this title, Transit and Commercial Properties. And yeah, so this has a different font name than the rest of the document. So a little bit of text like such variations has this font name GD3F1, and this one has this font name GD3F2. So I can fairly easily say that if item dot font name equals the title font, then I should add, let's see, some breaks before it, and then make it a H2 and add some breaks after it. And okay, my first mistake is that there needs to be a space for Markdown to treat it as a heading. Great. So we now have a bunch of headings. And my second mistake is that there appears to be some cases in which that font name just appears in the document for a blank bit of text, which is really annoying. So we really I think we should ignore blank bits of text. So if item.stir.trim continue. Cool. So what that does is that item.stir is the text and .trim gets rid of any white space. And if by the time that we've gotten rid of any white space, spaces, tabs, etc., then we should skip it. So continue just goes to the next item. So now we have a pretty decent little guy. I can see that I made another mistake and that there's transit and land value impacts repeated. And that is because this should be an else if. Great. Cool. Yeah, so that's essentially what I wanted, and now I can get to reading this really juicy urban planning text. I hope this was useful and shows what kind of a real honest exploration of some data and a library is like in Observable. We think it's pretty cool. So yeah, check it out.